Smile and learn! 5 things you should know about the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages were a very long period of time in history. Mind you, no less than 10 centuries. It began with the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 BC and ended with the discovery of America in 1492 AD. The end of the Middle Ages is also related to the fall of the Byzantine Empire and the invention of the printing press. After the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, Europe was divided in many territories. The majority of them were dominated by territorial monarchies, a ruling system where kings had come to power, meaning they were the ones that ruled. During the Middle Ages, society was based around the feudal system. Do you know what feudal system means? Picture a pyramid. Its top part would be the king, who, like we said before, had the power and ruled over the land with clerical consent. Right below the king and the clergy were the nobles. They ruled over the lands allocated to them by the king, in exchange for swearing allegiance and defending the country during warfare. Nobles had authority over peasants and vassals known as serfs who worked the land and lived there. They worked for protection. In exchange, peasants paid high taxes to their lords. As we said before, the Middle Ages lasted more than 1,000 years. That's why we divide this period in 2 phases: the early Middle Ages from the 5th to the 10th century and the late Middle Ages from the 11th to the 15th century. What's the difference about each phase? During the early Middle Ages, the nobility and the clergy had a lot of power. In contrast, during the late Middle Ages, the monarchy takes power back. During the Middle Ages, agriculture and cattle raising were solely a means of subsistence, that is to say, to feed the people. By contrast, during the late Middle Ages, there's an increase in production and commercial activity. While in the early Middle Ages, people lived on fiefs, during the late Middle Ages, there's a resurgence of the cities that become the new economic centers. During the Middle Ages, warfare was very common. The importance of knights derives from this fact as they played a key role defending their king and nobles. Knights were taught fighting skills and were trained with all sorts of weapons. They wore a heavy armor and a helmet which protected them. Many knights were members of the gentry. Apart from warfare, knights also participated in tournaments and jousts, risking their reputation and prestige. Have you ever seen a medieval castle? Castles were fortified structures typically built in the Middle Ages. They were situated on high ground, which made defending the territory much easier as you could see far into the distance. Castles were usually protected by defensive walls, and sometimes there was a moat surrounding them. The king and the noblemen lived in the castle. Medieval markets were just a place to buy food, grain, spices, fabrics, or jewelry. Peasants sold their farming products and cattle, while artisans sold handmade objects. In the Middle Ages, artisans of the same trade formed associations called craft guilds. For example, the Blacksmiths Guild, the Bread Bakers Guild, or the Stonecutters Guild. These are the 5 things you should know about the Middle Ages. Did you like learning about them? Did you like the video? We have so many more! Subscribe by clicking on the seal. And if you want to keep watching more videos, click on the boxes.